Chapter 244. Politics. Politics in the federal prisons can get real ugly real fast. It can get real bad. It's real in the field, and the real understood the hate. It was a matter of survival to understand the difference between the real and the fake. The real did real things and stayed away from real fools. The fake like they was real cool, but the fakeness came out real soon. Especially if it's conflict with some real dudes. Real goons with steel tools. In Lawton, the politics consisted mostly about drugs, robbery, alliances, and sometimes street conflict. In the feds, it consisted of drugs, robbery, alliances, and some deeper subjects. Cities, states, gangs, religion, and race. At any moment in the feds, an all-out war can break out because of these fragile factors. While still in Atlanta Penitentiary, a guy from Atlanta attempted to rape a Mexican. He was a neutral Mexican from Mexico. He stayed to himself and didn't affiliate with any gangs. A small, quiet dude. On this compound, Mexican Americans didn't get along with the Mexicans that were straight from Mexico, who were called Paisas. They called themselves straight Mexicans. The Mexican Americans called themselves straight Americans. A lot of the Mexicans straight from Mexico had never been free in America. They were usually caught smuggling drugs or humans into the country and was doing fed time until deportation back to Mexico. They protected themselves by sticking together and riding for one another. Their main rivals were usually the Mexican Americans, which consisted of over 50 different gangs. The Mexican Mafia was considered to be the most powerful of them all. The Paisas vowed revenge on the guy from Atlanta that attempted to rape the neutral Mexican guy. It was chow time, and mostly everybody left out of the cell block to go eat, and he was sitting in his cell reading a magazine when the Atlanta dude walked in. He attacked him and tried to choke him out. He was planning on rendering him unconscious and then raping him while everyone was gone. He was a weirdo that no one really dealt with, not even the other dudes from Atlanta. The Mexican guy fought him off while screaming, and another Mexican came to his aid. They had a small scuffle, and the Atlanta dude walked away acting like nothing major just happened. But the Mexicans were pissed, and as everyone was returning from the chow hall, the Mexicans were getting together in groups and was aiming to retaliate. The Mexican Americans sat back and watched. They seemed careless. They didn't have an alliance with the Mexicans because they didn't consider themselves Mexicans. They considered themselves as Americans. Crazy. But before the Mexicans retaliated, their shot caller approached the shot caller from Atlanta and proposed to him that they, the Atlanta car, gotta punish the rapist. If not, the Paisas will do it. Atlanta shot caller said he didn't even know who the dude was and he's not in their car, even though he's from Atlanta. That gave the Paisas the green light to do whatever they felt was appropriate. So as the weirdo rapist sat in the TV room looking at the TV fiending off a thick woman, they walked in 5 deep, pushing. 5 minutes later they walked out, leaving him butchered, turning him into a living, breathing pin cushion. Because this incident crossed racial lines, it was automatically a very fragile situation that could escalate into an all-out race war. So everyone was on pins and needles with ice picks and cleavers. I watched them running, neck ripped and bleeding, begging to be saved by police and paralegals. The cell block was quiet like pimps in cathedrals. All the other blacks on the compound was pissed that the Mexicans were given the green light to punish a black man. Most people felt the ATL guys should have disciplined him themselves, but some people agreed with their approach. He wasn't one of them, plus he was a rapist, so fuck him. We disagreed with their approach. It looked bad on all the greatest black men to allow someone from another race to get away with punishing one of us. Rapist or not, his punishment in this snake pit should have came from one of us. It was too many racists and cops in this system, so even though we had our own issues to sustain, we needed to stick together and contain the gay shit and stop. But blacks were too regional. We seemed to only stick together when we were outnumbered. Once we have the numbers, we split apart. GDs with GDs, Bloods with Bloods, Atlanta with Atlanta, DC with DC, Crips with Crips, Sunnis with Sunnis, Nation with Nation, Memphis with Memphis. A situation like this could soon have the potential to bloom into a full-blown war that started over some bullshit by a bullshit dude. All it took was for someone not understanding what was going on or didn't care and came to the aid of the black guy getting stabbed up by a group of Mexicans. If he was from DC, that would have involved everyone from DC. A lot of guys from DC are Muslims, so if one of them got involved, it would involve all the Muslims. Muslims are from everywhere, so if a Muslim from Baltimore got hit, then that could involve the whole Baltimore. Baltimore has a lot of Bloods, and that could involve all of the Bloods from the other states. The Bloods may be allies with another gang, so that could involve them, and on, and on, and on. It was combustible politics that has caused many men to lose their lives or their release dates. Sometimes it was best to get it squashed as soon as possible to avoid a bloodbath that could possibly spill over into other institutions. The Pisces who stabbed the rapist were removed from the compound. Then a meeting was held amongst all the black men to solidify how these incidents should be handled the next time. Chapter 246. Appeal withdrawn. After the incident with the Pisces, the prison went on lockdown for a week. On the third day of the lockdown, I was sleeping in the ice cold cell when I heard an officer's keys open in the cell door. It was my counselor, and she was smiling from ear to ear. She was so happy. Mr. Mowat, guess what? I looked at her and began fantasizing what she was gonna say. I'm in love with you. I want you to come to my office right now. I'll be in there buck naked waiting for you. She was so fine. But no, she said, your case has been overturned. Pack your stuff. You're going home. She was smiling like she won the lottery. As soon as I heard, you're going home, she wasn't fine anymore. She went from a 10 to a 2. She wasn't a dime anymore. She wasn't bad at all. She was just jailhouse fine. And my mind has been free. Mentally, I wasn't in jail anymore. My cellie hopped up and gave me a hug. He was a Crip from Cleveland, but caught his case in West Virginia and had a 25-year sentence. His case was very similar to mine, so my case gave him hope. The government withdrew their appeal of the 3-judge panel decision, which allowed for the case to be dismissed and could never be brought back. The Fourth Amendment violation had stuck. Those pigs should have never entered into my premises without a warrant. And the 3 judges agreed with that. By now, my counselor had walked inside of the cell, still smiling. As I jumped up off the bunk, she hurriedly ran over and gave me a hug. She was ecstatic because it was very rare that someone's case was overturned in the federal system. It was like winning the lottery. As a counselor, she has probably seen countless release dates that simply said, death. Hurry up before they change their mind, she said, laughing as she left out of the cell. But I knew I wasn't leaving. Deep inside, I knew those parole motherfuckers would be at the gate waiting for me. I've been dealing with them since I was 17 years old, so I knew how they operated. I put on a pair of sneakers, grabbed a bag of soap, razors, deodorant, and a lotion. I grabbed my legal work and pictures and left everything else to my cellie with instructions of what to keep and what to give away and to whom. I shook his hand and walked out of the cell. I was again heading into the unknown. I was again walking into a dark tunnel with the light at the end. The problem was, I couldn't gauge how far the light was. It looked so close, yet so far. As I walked off of the compound to R&D, I thought I might have lucked up. They were preparing my release papers and a bus ticket. They had a van outside of the prison waiting to take me to the Greyhound bus station. I was fingerprinted and changed out of my prison clothes into some Wrangler jeans and a button-up that they provided. It was a strip club across the street from the prison, and prostitutes used to trick on that street. I knew one guy that got released, and within 20 minutes he was rearrested for having sex with a prostitute in the alley across from the prison. The officer preparing my release said, "Don't you head over there messing with them hoes now." He didn't have to worry about that now. I wasn't even thinking about pussy now. All I wanted was to put the pieces of the puzzle back in place. I was 37 years old now, with almost 20 years in prison going in and out. I was serving a life sentence on an installment plan. Fuck this. Something has to change now. I would rather die than return here now. I should have been dead in a shootout last time, not again fighting for my freedom now. As a young man, I didn't give a fuck about anything, but I'm not young now. I'm out of excuses for bad decisions and avoidable mistakes. I can't defend or justify any more unforced errors. It's do or die now. Run or get ran over now. Fight or get beaten now. Drown or fly now. Chapter 249, Justice Department. My button-up shirt and Wrangler jeans looked good with my prison-issued canvas decks. I was going to leave the sneakers that I had on to anyone that walked past. I sat down and began thinking about how I'm going to accomplish my goals. How am I going to become a filmmaker? I know of no one in the filmmaking industry, and I have no idea on how to make a film. But I know that's what I want to do. I know if I put all of my energy that I put into hustling and busting guns into filmmaking, I could somehow pull it off. I had a bunch of screenplays that I had written, and I was excited at the thought of seeing them come to life. Watching movies in prison inspired me to write my own screenplays and visualize my own films. I watched movies and scrutinized every shot and every word. I saw mistakes in every film that I watched. I saw room to improve. I saw propaganda and fabrications over and over. I saw most filmmakers' agenda. After about 2 hours of visualizing, I was still sitting in a cage across from a room with a few officers preparing for my release. But I started to feel like something wasn't right. Normally, it didn't take this long for someone to be released. I started getting that sinking feeling that I knew so well. That feeling of they up to something. That feeling of defense. The feeling that I was about to be attacked. Then I heard the phone ring. I watched as one of the officers answered the phone. He listened for a few minutes, then looked over at me. He then turned to the computer. He then looked over at me again. He typed something into the computer and then slowly leaned back in the chair. Then he looked over at me again. He was a black man, so I was able to read his expressions. He was excited to see me going home, but the excitement had just wiped off of his face. He stared at the ceiling while listening to the phone. He didn't look at me anymore. He just listened and nodded and seemed to reluctantly agree with whoever was on the phone. And then he wiped his face with his bare hands and shook his head. I had a feeling it was bad news, and the bad news concerned me. He then hung up the phone and stared at the computer for a minute without typing. Then he looked over at me and shook his head. Hey bro, I just got a call from DC. They demanded that we don't release you until they get here. Who was it? The Justice Department. The Justice Department? What the fuck they want with me? Shit, that's what I was gonna ask you. I've been working here for 20 years and I never saw anything like this before. What, you a terrorist or something? I laughed. I guess. He made a call to the van outside waiting to take me to the bus station to let them know I wasn't coming out. He took back the Wrangler jeans and the button up and threw me a jumpsuit. Sorry about this, bro, but we gotta take you to the hole. Take me to the hole for what? We don't have anywhere else to put you. You don't have any convictions because your case was overturned, so we can't put you on a compound in population, and we were ordered by the Justice Department not to release you. We don't have any other options. A bunch of guards appeared and then went into the office with him and closed the door. After 5 minutes, they returned and placed me back in handcuffs and shackles. As we were walking to the hole, one of the officers asked if I was Taliban or Al Qaeda. Another one said, "You look like one of them motherfuckers too." They all laughed at something that wasn't funny. I was taken to an old dirty cell that already had someone in there. I dropped my bedroll and jumped straight up onto the top bunk. I didn't even speak to my new cellie. I just laid back on the bunk and shook my head.